What's up, my beautiful people? This is your boy Stefan, your Afro Grenadian ambassador. I welcome you all back to my channel. To all my subscribers, viewers, channel members, I greatly appreciate you. And don't forget to watch all the ads that are placed on my videos. Well, the internet, guys, I must say, is a powerful place. And we know there is the downside of the internet, but also there is the upside of the internet. Back then, when you want to find out something, or you need to know something, you had to go look for that thing or that person. And you have to pray and hope that this person is not dead, or else you will not be able to find out what you are looking for. Well, it is amazing to see that in our today's world and society, you don't have to go looking for people anymore, go be looking for things anymore, but this information is at our disposal at the click of a button. Well, in this video, my friends, we have the late Joachim Mark, who is now deceased. I have never known him, I have never met him, but when I came across his video that he have did, this is an old clip, you know, a few that he have did maybe 12 years ago, I believe, you know, on the history of Grenada becoming an Afro-centric society. Because many people ask me, how is it Black people have ended up in this part of the world? How is it that you have Africans in a small island nation like called Grenada? Well, in this video, all of your questions will be addressed. For those of you who may not be acquainted or the first time you are hearing about Grenada, this video is for you. So stay right there. Don't click another button.
My name is Joachim Mark. I'm from Grenada, an island in the Caribbean. I came to the United States of America some 49 years ago, and I studied engineering at Howard University. And sometimes I get involved with the history of Grenada and other parts of the Caribbean. So today we'll spend a little time speaking on the island of Grenada. Grenada, as I said, is an island in what we call the Caribbean. It is about 60 miles, rather 60 degrees west longitude, and about 12 degrees north of the equator. In other words, we are not far from the island of Trinidad and the mainland of South America. Now, the first people to live on the island of Grenada came from the Venezuelans. They were called Saibonis. Now, if one looked at people from Cuba, the Dominican Republic, some of them from Puerto Rico, they look very much like the American Indians. That is a mixture of the Saibonis and people of Spanish descent.
Guys, this is very new to me. You know, in school, the first lesson they taught us, those who have first settled in the Caribbean, who was called the Kalinago people. I have never heard about the Saibonis. So that is very new to me, very interesting.
And that mixture is called mestizos. Well, the Saibonis came to Grenada about the year 1000. After they had spent about 10 years on the island, they were joined by another group, also from the Venezuelans, and they were known as Arawaks. The Arawaks were more civilized. They built huts, and the others lived in caves. But the two groups, Saibonis and Arawaks, they lived very well with each other. They did fishing as the main source. Now, after the Arawaks and Saibonis had lived together side by side for about 50 years, they were joined by another group. This time the group came from the Guyanas, and they were called Kalinagos. I would like everybody to remember the name Kalinagos, because at some time we will see the significance in that name. The Kalinagos were very, very adventurous. When they landed in Grenada, they killed all of the Saiboni and Arawak men, but they kept the women. And they spread themselves throughout the Caribbean. They went as far as Belize, and they set up stations in Belize, in Martinique, in Dominica, in St. Vincent, and of course Grenada. and they were in communication with each other from these various bases, and they had come to some agreement. If one group was attacked, then of course you are attacking the entire group. Well, they went on like that until about the year 1608, some Englishmen decided to settle there in Grenada. And some Dutch nuns, Roman Catholic nuns, who at the time based in Martinique, advised the Kalinagos to kick British out, said that you shouldn't trust them. They went back to Grenada and they killed nearly all of the Englishmen. In fact, only about 12 came out alive. And they ran back to England and told the people of England and Europe that they went to that section of the world and they ran into some people. The people were so fierce, they were such savages that they, well, once a person is eating people, he is a cannibal. And consequently, the people of England gave the Kalinagos a derogatory name.
Oh.
They call them Caribs.
Okay.
Because a Carib is a cannibal.
So guys, I mean, this is new to me. So the name Caribs that we know the Kalinago people as was not a good name back then. It's a name given to the Kalinago people to, as he said, it's a degrading name that, to basically tell them, describe the Kalinago people as animal eaters, not animal, but they were cannibals, sorry. They were cannibals. So that was a name that was placed on them, as a degrading way by the Europeans. And so the Europeans are known for that. Like the Africans that came from Africa, they enslaved as enslaved people, they gave them the N-word name. I cannot say it here because it's a very sensitive thing, and YouTube might take me for that. But oh, that's interesting. That's interesting.
It turned out that in the history of the whole area, there's no record that we ever had cannibals there. So technically, Caribs never lived in the Caribbean. The people who lived there were Kalinagos. But of course, the name was given by the British, so it stopped. So we ended up with a whole region since then being called the Caribbean. And in fact, that body of water to the west of all these islands is now known as the Caribbean Sea. And as I said, technically, the Caribs never lived there. So anyhow, they settled in Grenada, these Kalinagos people, as we now call them, Caribs. And they were there peacefully for some time, until the year 1654. The French came and kicked them out. The French did it very ruthlessly, and these Kalinagos people, rather than surrendering to the French, they jumped into the sea on a very steep precipice.
So so for those of you who do not know, Grenada passed through the hands of two colonizers, the French and the British. They fought over Grenada back and forth for many years for control of the island. All right. So, but the French colonizers were the first to settle in Grenada as, Europeans.
Northern part of Grenada, which is now called Sautez, from the French word meaning to jump. And some people call it Leaper's Hill. And that's the area in which they went. Well, the French stayed there from 1654 and changed the whole pattern of life in Grenada, because more Frenchmen came in and they divided the country into large agricultural estates. So you had a Gale family developing, having one estate. You have de la Motte, see all the French names. Then you had places like La Sagesse developing, and so on. So they developed all these estates, but they needed people to work them. So the French started to bring in slaves from Africa to work on these estates.
So those of you who come to Grenada, you visit Grenada, and you're wondering, well, Grenada was colonized by the British, but why all this French name? Is because, remember, the French were the first ones to control Grenada, and they left these names, as our late Joachim Mark is saying, these names were names after plantations that were controlled by the French, and they left it. So all of those villages that we have in French name was actually plantations that was controlled by the French.
Now, these estates, some of them are very prosperous, and incidentally, the main source of income, agriculture, and agriculture meant sugarcane in those days. So some sugarcane fields were doing very well, and therefore there's a certain section of Grenada known as Mama Can. That's the mother canes. The canes are beautiful and big. There's another place today we call Bacolette, Canjoli, beautiful canes. We had section La Sagesse. La Sagesse came with very nice canes, so it was called Can Savannah, beautiful savannah of cane. But there's another place called Pémotin. It was a waste of my time to plant cane in those days. There's another place called Can Blain. It was blighted cane, so they gave names to suit. But the French put in place an agricultural system, and they had all these estates put in place. But the British challenged them eventually, and the British kicked them out after they had spent some time. In fact, the British threw them out in 1764. And the British kept them out for some time. The French came back, took it over, and they stayed there. They took back in 1779. They eventually threw the British out. The British came back in 1783 for good. And this time they forced the French to sign an agreement called the Treaty of Versailles. Now that makes a very important part, because in those days the monarchy in France and in England had been very tied up, much tied up to the church. Now when the French came to Grenada, they brought the Roman Catholic religion.
Right.
And everything there was Catholic. In fact, the Catholic Church started schools under the French.
And guys, that was new to me as well. I always grew up thinking the Roman Catholicism, or the religion was brought by the British. But I learned it was not the British, but actually the French that came in with the Catholicism religion.
But when the British came, the monarch at the time was Anglican.
Okay.
So they were very ruthless.
So Anglican was brought in by the British, and Catholics or Catholicism was brought in by the French.
Executed a lot of the Frenchmen. They took away their estates from them. They banned the Catholic Church. And the Trinidad government at the time was under Spanish rule. So the Spanish made special arrangements for those fleeing from Grenada into Trinidad. Now when the British came, they were very ruthless. As I said, they confiscated. They also divided the country, not only in estates now, but they had parishes. Constitutional parishes, if you want to call them.
So my Grenadian people, take note why we are divided into parishes, or what was the history behind that.
And of course they set up their own governing body to run. But they were very, very, very ruthless against the slaves and against the Frenchmen. Well, in 1795, a certain Frenchman, he couldn't take it anymore. His name was Julien Fedon. He decided that somehow Grenada should free itself of British colonial rule. The slaves wanted to free themselves from British slavery. So Fedon convinced them to join him to get the British out. And we had what was called the rebellion of 1795. It was a very bloody.
So guys, let me help you guys to understand. Fedon was a French plantation owner. All right, he came from a wealthy class of family. I mean, he was mixed. He was a mulatto. His mother was African. His father was a French businessman, and because of his father, he had that privilege. So Fedon was for slavery. He wasn't against slavery. He was for slavery. But when the British came and controlled the island, Fedon didn't like that. He wanted the island to return back to his people, or his French descendants, his French people, and the slaves on the African slaves on that island at the same time wanted freedom. So they took that opportunity, in freeing themselves. So Fedon were able to convince our African enslaved for parents who wanted freedom to free themselves, and that is how we came up with we had the Fedon rebellion. Basically, it was Julian Fedon who led that rebellion against the British, not for the freedom of African people, but he wanted the island to go back to French colony.
Rebellion. In time, of course, Fedon himself was captured and executed, and many of the slaves were just butchered by the British.
Oh, and so as we hear the late Joachim Mark is saying that Fedon was captured and executed, because there have been a lot of stories that, we are told in history books that Fedon was never captured. And to this day, no one know where he ran to. There was a lot of speculations. But he's saying that Fedon was captured and executed, and a lot of the African enslaved people who joined him in that rebellion was massacred.
The British set the whole pace then for good. But some of the British landowners, they decided they wouldn't have anything to do with slaves anymore. So they called some slaves together, and they said, you keep the estate, work it, just give me a certain percentage and keep the rest for yourself. And these, what we call slave managers, eventually became very wealthy. So that by the time we had slavery coming to an end, they became the estate owners. You had the Noels. Noels, they came from the parish of St. Andrews. And incidentally, that arrangement was made primarily with the landowners in the parish of St. Andrews. You had names like the Hannibals. You had the Vincents. The Vincents originally came from Haiti. You had the Alexanders.
That's me.
The Alexis. You had the Georges.
Wow.
The Courtneys.
That's
these slaves became very, very wealthy by the time slavery ended. And they became now the owners, not only the managers though, they became the owners of the large estates. Some of them were very adventurous. The Alexis family in particular, they were very adventurous. They started to buy other estates now. They were marching towards the north, buying estates and going towards the south. But when they got to St. Patrick's, they were shut off because the estate owners in the British estate owners in that area, they didn't get involved with that type of arrangement. So the Alexis family skipped and they went to an island next door called Carriacou, which was also a British island. And they bought an estate there. And they called it Hermitage, after the Hermitage from which they had come. They moved to St. David's. So, and they advanced themselves in education, in real estate, so much so, the first medical doctor, Grenadian medical doctor, was one Dr. George N. Alexis.
So guys, this is very, very interesting. I mean, it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing to see how Grenada has progressed over the years from the times that the first settlers came here in becoming an Afro-centric society. And it's also mind-blowing to see the surnames that we bear today are actually surnames of our plantation owners, rich plantation owners. And what was very shocking to me is that some of the slaves that was now free became landowners, and they became very wealthy. They became very wealthy landowners. And I have never heard that in school. They have never taught me that. So that is some things I never knew. And that is very interesting. So guys, let me know what are your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. Until next time, God bless you.